ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that the truth never stays buried for long in Port Charles, especially when blood has already been spilled and fear begins to rot every promise meant to keep a family safe. What starts as a lie told for protection quickly becomes something far more dangerous, because once Ross Cullum turns his survival into a personal mission, the shooting that nearly ended his life stops being a closed wound and becomes the center of a new war. He does not want sympathy, and he does not want justice in any ordinary sense. He wants identity. He wants a face, a name, a pulse he can hunt. That hunger alone is enough to turn the city darker, but what makes the situation truly explosive is the possibility that the truth is worse than anyone wants to admit. If Cullum realizes that Rocco is the one who pulled the trigger, then this is no longer just a story about revenge. It becomes a story about corruption of innocence, about adults scrambling to hide a child inside a crime too large for him to survive, and about how love can twist itself into deception so severe that it begins to destroy the very person it is trying to protect. Cullum's recovery does not soften him, it sharpens him. Every scar becomes a reminder that someone tried to erase him, and men like Cullum do not wake up grateful simply because they survived. They wake up furious that anyone dared to believe they could be removed from the board. From the moment he begins to regain his strength, his mind returns again and again to the dock, to the timing of the shot, to the angle, to the movement in the seconds before the pain hit him. He knows Jason's confession does not fit. He knows the story being fed to the authorities is a shield, not a truth. That realization becomes his obsession. He starts pulling apart every detail, not because he enjoys puzzles, but because the lie itself insults him. In his mind, someone looked at him, judged him beatable, and then hid behind Jason Morgan's sacrifice as if that would be enough to end the matter. It only deepens it. If Jason is willing to go down for someone else, then that someone else must matter deeply. That single conclusion is what begins to narrow Cullum's search, and once he starts connecting Jason's loyalty to the frightened tremors rippling through Rocco's world, the story takes on a terrifying new shape. Rocco is not built for this kind of darkness, and that is exactly why the danger around him feels so merciless. Guilt changes him from the inside first, long before anyone says his name aloud. His silence grows heavier. His nerves become visible. Every mention of the shooting tightens something in him. He is no hardened criminal learning how to bury a secret. He is a frightened young man carrying the unbearable knowledge that one reckless, catastrophic moment may destroy not only his own life, but the lives of everyone trying to save him. That is the cruelest part. The people protecting him believe they are shielding him from prison, from retaliation, from the machinery of organizations and enemies that would crush him without hesitation. But the cover-up is turning into a second trauma. It forces Rocco to live inside a nightmare where every look feels accusing, every question sounds like a trap, and every day that Jason continues the lie becomes another weight pressing against his conscience. The more everyone insists this sacrifice is necessary, the more Rocco begins to feel as if his existence itself has become poisonous. Lulu senses the collapse before she can name it. A mother always knows when fear has stopped being temporary and started living permanently inside her child. She sees it in the way Rocco withdraws, in the way his face changes when the shooting is mentioned, in the brittle edge beneath his attempts to act normal. For Lulu, this becomes a different kind of horror. It is not just the possibility of legal danger or physical retaliation. It is the realization that Rocco's soul is being warped by secrecy. She is torn between two instincts that cannot peacefully exist together. One part of her wants the truth exposed before the lie devours him completely. Another part of her is ready to burn down every fragile alliance in Port Charles if that is what it takes to keep her son alive. That conflict makes Lulu more dangerous than anyone realizes. Her fear is maternal, but it is also ferocious. Once she understands that Cullum may be closer to the truth than anyone expected, she stops thinking in abstract terms. She starts thinking in terms of survival, and survival has a way of making moral boundaries look negotiable. Nathan is pulled into the same storm, but his struggle carries a different weight. He knows what systems do to the vulnerable. He understands that once Rocco is identified as the shooter, there will be no mercy from the people who see him as leverage, loose ends, or proof of weakness. Nathan's instinct is to move, to act, to create a shield before the threat fully closes in. But action comes with its own risk. Every protection plan requires trust, and trust in Port Charles is always expensive. Nathan must decide how much he is willing to hide, how far he is willing to step outside the law, and whether saving Rocco means aligning himself with people whose methods he would once have condemned. That is where the internal fracture begins. He may tell himself this is temporary, that it is about protection and not corruption, but once you start building walls around a lie, those walls rarely stay clean. Nathan begins to understand that the effort to save Rocco could drag all of them into a place where innocence no longer matters, only strategy does. Meanwhile, Cullum becomes colder precisely because he senses fear radiating from the people around the truth. He starts noticing the avoidance, the carefully measured words, the unnatural urgency with which certain names are defended and certain subjects are redirected. He does not need a confession at first. He only needs pressure points. He starts applying them one by one, quietly, deliberately, enjoying the way panic surfaces when he moves close to the right nerve. He lets Jason's confession stand publicly because it serves him for the moment. A man in Jason's position tied up in legal consequences is useful. It weakens the opposition and creates the illusion that Cullum has accepted the arrangement. But privately he continues digging, because revenge means more when the real target is cornered at the moment he still believes he might be safe. Cullum is not simply looking for the shooter now. He is looking for the weakest seam in the people, protecting that shooter, the person most likely to crack, the relationship most likely to fracture under pressure. Once he starts suspecting Rocco, he no longer sees a child. He sees leverage, and that makes the situation monstrously dangerous. The emotional cruelty of this storyline lies in what it does to Jason as well. Jason's decision to take the blame is rooted in protection, but protection in Port Charles always comes at the cost of self-erasure. He knows the confession is a lie. He knows Cullum will probably see through it, yet he makes the choice anyway because he cannot tolerate the alternative. The idea of Rocco being dragged through a brutal investigation, targeted by enemies, or thrown into a place designed to break people is unacceptable to him. Jason accepts that he can bear prison, suspicion, and the destruction of his own future if it buys Rocco even a temporary chance to breathe. But this is what makes his sacrifice tragic rather than noble in any simple way. He is not saving Rocco from consequence. He is postponing it while allowing the web around them all to grow tighter. Deep down, Jason understands that a lie this big does not dissolve danger. It redirects it. And as Cullum's suspicion sharpens, Jason begins to see that he may have done more than protect Rocco. He may have told Cullum exactly how valuable the true shooter must be. That is when the story turns from tense to truly explosive. Cullum starts assembling the truth not through evidence alone, but through human behavior. He watches Rocco too carefully. He notices patterns no one else wants to acknowledge. Maybe it is a moment of visible panic when the doc is mentioned. Maybe it is a defensive reaction too fast, too raw, too disproportionate for an innocent bystander. Maybe it is the look of someone who has been told over and over to stay calm and is now failing at the performance. Whatever the trigger, once the suspicion lands fully, Cullum's revenge mutates. The man who shot him is not a rival he can kill cleanly and forget. It is someone younger, more fragile, and therefore in some twisted way even more useful. Cullum can now do what men like him do best. Weaponize fear before he weaponizes violence. He can stalk the edges of Rocco's world without ever needing to strike immediately. He can let the terror build, let Lulu and Nathan unravel, let Jason feel helpless, and let Rocco drown in the awareness that the truth has found him. For Rocco, that looming exposure becomes its own psychological prison. He starts imagining death before it happens, sensing that the people around him are trying to keep alive the illusion of safety, even as that safety disintegrates. This is where the shadow of a new death begins to hang over the story. It may not even matter at first whether the death will be Rocco's, Cullum's, or someone who steps between them. What matters is that everyone can feel the fatal direction of the conflict. The city begins to move like a place waiting for impact. Every protective effort from Lulu and Nathan only confirms how serious the danger has become. Their desperation sends a silent message to Rocco that there is no longer any version of this ending cleanly. If Cullum truly believes Rocco pulled the trigger, then Rocco is not just at risk of exposure. He is at risk of becoming the center of an elimination plan designed to erase liability and punish weakness in one brutal move. Lulu and Nathan respond not as calm strategists, but as people being pushed toward the edge by love and terror. They start making decisions faster, darker, and with less room for conscience. Safe houses, secret meetings, misdirection, half-truths, and fractured alliances begin to define their actions. They may tell themselves they are only doing what any parent or protector would do, but there is a slippery quality to these choices. The more they maneuver to keep Rocco hidden, the more they begin to resemble the world they claim to hate. That contradiction adds emotional power to every scene in this imagined arc. Lulu is no longer simply protecting her son from the consequences of a horrible moment. She is fighting to keep him from being swallowed by a system of vengeance that treats youth as weakness and weakness as an invitation for violence. Nathan, meanwhile, may reach the point where he has to decide whether saving Rocco requires preemptive action against Cullum, a choice that would drag him across a line he may never come back from. This is where the writing becomes richest, because the greatest danger is not only what Cullum might do, it is what the people who love Rocco might become while trying to stop him. And then there is the unbearable emotional center of it all, Rocco's relationship to the people sacrificing everything for him. Protection should make him feel loved, but under these circumstances it risks making him feel cursed. He watches adults lie, scheme, and bleed because of one moment linked to him. He sees Jason surrender his freedom, Lulu lose her peace, Nathan abandon certainty, and the threat of death spread like poison through every home connected to his name. That kind of burden can change a person permanently. It can convince someone that he does not deserve rescue, that he is the reason disaster keeps expanding, that maybe the only way to save the people he loves is to stop letting them protect him. This is the kind of emotional turn that could make the storyline explode. If Rocco reaches the point where guilt overpowers fear, he may decide to act on his own, confess, flee, or confront the threat directly, not because he is brave in any traditional sense, but because he can no longer endure being the silent center of everyone else's destruction. That possibility is what gives the story its haunting momentum. Cullum's search for the truth is not just uncovering a shooter. It is setting off a chain reaction that exposes the fault lines in every relationship around Rocco. Love turns into secrecy. Protection turns into manipulation. Grief turns into obsession. Fear turns into strategy. Every person is being forced into a corner where no choice remains innocent. If a death does come from this, it will not feel random. It will feel inevitable, the result of too many lies layered over too much pain. That is why this arc feels so potent. It is not simply a revenge plot. It is a story about how one violent second can contaminate an entire family, how adults create monsters when they mistake concealment for salvation, and how a frightened young person can become the most tragic figure in the room precisely because everyone loves him too much to tell the truth. In the end, the darkest part of this unfolding battle is that Cullum may be right about one thing, even while he remains monstrous in every other way. The truth is still alive, and it is shaking behind every locked door in Port Charles. Once he knows Rocco is the shooter, he will not stop. Once Lulu and Nathan understand that he knows, they will not be able to pretend that patience or silence can save the boy anymore. And once Rocco realizes that the people around him are preparing for the possibility of his death, something inside him may break for good. The explosion coming is not only physical, it is emotional, moral, and deeply personal. It is the kind of explosion that leaves families standing in the wreckage of their own choices, wondering at what point love stopped being a refuge and became the very thing that led them all toward the edge.